You have 24 hours to demolish that eyesore. Or we recalling the sheriff. That's what the HOA president screamed at me standing on my land while her perfume fought the clean mountain air like it had something to prove. She waved papers like she was a judge, a jury, and an executioner all at once. What she didn't know was that I was holding a secret big enough to erase her power, collapse her HOA, and turn her threats into the most expensive mistake of her life. Because the truth was, she wasn't the queen of this mountain. And by the time I was done, she'd be begging on camera, in front of her own people, for mercy she didn't deserve. My name is Marcus Brennan. I am 45 years old, recently divorced, the kind of guy who used to measure success by whether the lights stayed on and the bills got paid on time. I spent most of my life working as an electrician, honest work. Hard work. The kind of work that leaves your hands rough and your back sore, but your conscience clean. Then my marriage collapsed, not with a loud explosion, but with a slow, humiliating crumble. Lawyers, paperwork, half-truths, arguments that started over nothing and ended with someone packing a bag at 2 in the morning. And after the dust settled, I ended up in a cramped apartment in the city that smelled like old carpet and regret. The kind of place where the walls feel too close, and your thoughts feel too loud. The only thing that kept me breathing through it was my daughter, Emma, 15 years old. Sharp, funny, but at that age where kids act like they don't need you while secretly still needing you more than they ever admit. I'd been trying to convince her, and myself, that her dad wasn't a failure. Then the phone call came. A lawyer, calm voice, formal tone. He told me my uncle Silas had died, and he left me land. 5 acres in the Colorado mountains, 5 acres of open sky, pine trees, granite cliffs, creek water so clear it looked like glass. It didn't sound real. Uncle Silas was complicated, a family mystery. The guy relatives talked about in the same way they talked about storms and accidents, like you should respect the danger and avoid getting too close. He disappeared into the mountains in 1980. Every now and then he'd show up at Christmas smelling like wood smoke and diesel fuel, wearing an old jacket that looked like it had survived wars nobody wrote down. He'd sit in the corner, drink coffee, stare at the fire like it owed him money, and mutter weird things like, "Land has more secrets than trees." Most people laughed him off, but I never did. I didn't understand him, but I always felt like he knew something, like he was playing a long game the rest of us couldn't even see. So when his lawyer told me I inherited his property, I didn't just hear land. I heard second chance. I drove out there 2 days later. The first breath I took on that land felt like my lungs had been waiting years for it. No exhaust, no sirens, no neighbors arguing through walls, just mountain air and the sound of water moving over stone. The creek ran through the property like it belonged there. Hawks cried overhead. Pine sap and wild sage mixed into a scent so clean it felt unreal. There was an old concrete foundation half finished, like someone had started a dream and stopped midway. And there was a workshop, a real workshop. Old tools, dust, that smell of oil and wood that instantly makes you feel like work is possible. I stood there for a long time, just staring, listening, and for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't stress. Hope. I made a decision right there. I cashed out my 401k, quit my city job, packed my life into my truck like I was escaping something. Because I wasn't building a mansion. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I just wanted a modest log cabin. A place where Emma could come on weekends and see her dad building something real instead of falling apart. The first day of construction was therapy. The rhythm of hammer on nail, the bite of saw through timber, the feeling of doing something that didn't involve court dates and emotional landmines. Day 2. I was tired but happy. Day 3. Everything changed. I was cutting a beam when I heard gravel crunch. Not the casual crunch of a delivery truck. The angry crunch of someone who wanted to be heard. I looked up and saw a pristine white BMW X5 pulling into the edge of my property like it was making an entrance on purpose. The driver's door opened with slow confidence. And out stepped Victoria Ashworth. She looked mid-50s. Dressed like she just left a boardroom where she fired half a company. Designer business casual. Hair perfect. Sunglasses even though the sun wasn't that bright. She held a leather portfolio like a weapon. Her heels clicked on the rocky ground like she didn't care what kind of land she was on as long as it submitted to her. Then her perfume hit me. It was floral and heavy and aggressive, like it was trying to colonize the mountain air. She marched toward me like my property line was a suggestion. Excuse me. Not a greeting. Not a question. A command. Are you the individual responsible for this unauthorized construction? She said. Individual. Like it tasted bad. I set my saw down slowly. Marcus Brennan. I said. Building a cabin. On my land. Her lips tightened. She flipped open her portfolio and started shuffling papers with theatrical authority. You are in violation of multiple community covenants. No permits. No architectural review. No environmental assessment. Then she looked at my half-built cabin like it personally offended her. Frankly, this rustic approach threatens property values. I stared around at the wilderness. Property values for who? I asked. I don't see any houses. Victoria's smile sharpened. The Pine Valley Homeowners Association governs all residential properties within our jurisdiction. She produced a document like she was revealing a royal decree. Your uncle signed these covenants when we formed 6 months ago. You inherited his obligations. 6 months ago. I blinked. My uncle died 8 months ago. I said. Her smile didn't move. She handed me a cease and desist order like she was handing me my own execution. It demanded immediate halt of construction. It included a bill. $2,500 in. Accumulated penalties. Remove all materials within 48 hours. Victoria said. Daily fines begin at $500. Doubling weekly. I could feel heat rising behind my eyes. She wasn't just trying to control me. She was trying to crush me. Then she delivered the real message, the one she thought would break me. Let me be frank. Mr. Brennan. Her eyes swept over my work clothes. My beat-up truck. My calloused hands. This isn't the type of neighborhood where people in your situation typically thrive. I didn't miss the way she said. Situation. We maintain certain expectations. She continued. Voice syrupy and poisonous. About resident quality. Then she tilted her head slightly. And I'd hate for your daughter to be embarrassed by any unpleasantness. My stomach dropped. Emma. She knew about Emma. She researched me. Divorce. Money problems. Everything. I stepped closer without even thinking. Are you threatening my family? I asked. Victoria's smile was winter. I am offering friendly advice. She said. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Especially when you're clearly outmatched. She turned and walked back to her BMW like she'd already won. Before getting in, she looked back and said, 48 hours. Don't make this harder than necessary. Then she drove off, leaving her perfume hanging in the air like an insult. I stood there staring at the cease and desist order. Then at my cabin. And I heard Uncle Sila's in my head like he was standing behind me. Don't let anyone push you around. Victoria Ashworth thought she owned the mountain. She was about to find out what happens when you threaten the wrong man on the wrong land. She didn't even wait 48 hours. The next morning, she came back. This time with a lawyer. Or at least something shaped like one. A beat-up Honda Civic pulled in behind her BMW. Out stepped Douglas Cranky. Cheap suit. Coffee-stained tie. Briefcase held together with duct tape and bad decisions. He looked like he'd gotten his law degree from a cereal box. Victoria marched up like she was leading an execution squad. Mr. Brennan, she announced loudly. You are being served with official legal documents. Cranky shuffled papers with shaky hands. Pursuant to Pine Valley HOA covenants. He said, you owe $15,000 in retroactive penalties. $15,000 for building a cabin on my own land. Then he added, almost proudly, furthermore, you never received proper HOA disclosure documents during the property transfer, which may void your ownership claims. Victoria watched my face like she expected me to crumble. Instead, I smiled slowly. I'll review these with my attorney. I said calmly. Victoria laughed. Sharp and cruel. You can afford an attorney. She said. Save yourself the embarrassment. The moment they left, I drove straight to the county courthouse. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like they were tired of witnessing humanity. That's where I met Betty. The clerk. Kind eyes. Helpful voice. I told her my situation. She didn't roll her eyes or act annoyed. She leaned in and helped me pull records, deeds, maps, HOA filings. And within an hour, my blood started to boil. The Pine Valley HOA had been formed 6 months ago, 2 months after Uncle Silas died. The boundaries were drawn like a bullseye perfectly around my 5 acres, plus just 12 houses. My land represented 60% of the HOA's total area. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a trap. Betty lowered her voice. Looks like someone drew those lines specifically to catch your uncle's land. She whispered. I pulled more documents. Every HOA member was either related to Victoria or worked for her husband's construction company. This wasn't governance. It was organized theft with paperwork. And one thing stood out so clearly it almost made me laugh. Dead people can sign new contracts, which meant their entire claim was built on a lie. I walked out of that courthouse with copies of everything and a clarity I hadn't felt since before my divorce. Victoria wasn't powerful. She was desperate. And desperation makes people sloppy. I called Sarah Kim that same day. Real estate attorney. Sharp reputation. Her office smelled like coffee and determination. She read through the documents, eyes narrowing. This is legally impossible, she said finally. You cannot retroactively bind a dead person to covenants formed after death. And you definitely can demand penalties based on that. She looked up at me. I've seen HOA scams, she said. But this is brazen. She grabbed a legal pad. We're refiling counterclaims, she said. Harassment, false claims, intentional emotional distress. And we're going to investigate how they dragged your land into boundaries after transfer. I felt something shift in my chest. I wasn't alone anymore. But Victoria didn't stop. She escalated. Fast. 2 days later, she held an emergency HOA meeting. Didn't invite me. My neighbor Jake went and reported back over beers on my porch. She has got people scared, Jake said, telling them you some dangerous drifter. Criminal background. The whole thing. Then came the online attacks. A Facebook group popped up. Pine Valley Community Safety. My photo stolen from an old union newsletter posted like a mugshot. Warnings about transient criminals. Threatening children. The comments were poison. Get this predator out. My kids aren't safe. Call the sheriff. I watched it like I was watching someone take a hammer to my life. Then my phone rang. Linda, my ex-wife. Her voice was shaking with anger. Marcus, she said. What is going on? I didn't even have time to respond before she continued. Emma's friends are showing her posts calling you a sex offender. She's crying in her room asking if her dad is a monster. My vision blurred. I tasted metal in my mouth. What posts? I managed. That group. Linda snapped. They were saying you were a predator. My hands clenched so hard my knuckles hurt. It's fake, I said. All fake. You better fix it, Linda said, voice cracking. Because of this affects custody. The line went dead. I sat there in Uncle Silas's workshop afterward, surrounded by oil stains and old tools and decades of silence. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt rage. Victoria didn't just come after my cabin. She came after my child. That meant this wasn't about property anymore. This was war. But here's the thing about arrogant people. They love showing off. And showing off makes them careless. Because Victoria did something unbelievably stupid. In her rush to prove the HOA had money to fight threats, she posted financial records publicly. And the numbers were insane. Over 6 months, the HOA collected $847,000 in special assessments. 12 houses. That's over 70 grand per family. For what? No amenities. No clubhouse. No shared infrastructure projects. Nothing. Just money disappearing. I took screenshots and drove straight to Sarah. She stared at the numbers and nearly choked on her coffee. She just admitted to potential fraud. Sarah said, publicly, in writing. Then came Victoria's next move. A county inspector showed up at my property. He looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to be there. He handed me a citation for violations that made no sense. Sorry, he muttered. Orders from above. Someone else got pulled. As his truck drove away, I realized something worse than HOA harassment was happening. This wasn't just community bullying anymore. This was corruption. And corruption draws attention from the kind of agencies that do not play nice. Then the sabotage started. One night I woke up to the smell of diesel. Sharp. Bitter. I ran outside and found my lumber pile smashed like someone went at it with a bat. My generator tipped, fuel soaking into pine needles. Roofing nails scattered across my access road like landmines. By sunrise, my truck had 4 flat tires. Then an anonymous complaint hit my email claiming I was destroying protected wetlands. Wetlands? They were talking about a seasonal creek that had been running there longer than Victoria had been alive. Then came the concerned citizens. Cars parked near my entrance, not quite blocking access but making it hard enough to be intentional. When I confronted them, they smiled like saints. We were just exercising our right to park on public roads, they said. Then fake safety signs appeared along the mountain road. Official looking. Dangerous construction. Authorized personnel only. My contractor called in a panic. Marcus, he said, people are saying your site is contaminated. I can lose other customers over this. They weren't just attacking me. They were cutting off my support. And that's when I realized Victoria wasn't trying to win in court. She was trying to starve me out. Make me give up. But sabotage is messy. Messy leaves evidence. I installed cameras, motion sensors, night vision, floodlights. If Victoria wanted to play criminal, I was going to record it in high definition. It didn't take long. Around midnight, a pickup truck crept down my access road with headlights off. Someone stepped out in a hoodie, carrying a gas can. He moved toward my lumber pile. My cameras caught everything, even the moment he looked directly into the lens. Like a deer realizing the forest had eyes. It was Tommy Ashworth, Victoria's son, 20-something, and apparently as stupid as he was loyal. The next morning, I walked into the sheriff's office with a USB drive. Video evidence, license plate, face, everything. And just like that, Victoria's concerned citizens story started collapsing. But I wasn't done. Sarah and I kept digging. And what we uncovered explained everything. A development plan. A luxury resort project worth tens of millions. And they needed my 5 acres as the centerpiece. The scenic view. The access. The key. And buried in planning documents was a community relations consultation fee. $400,000. Sarah stared at it. That's not consulting. She said. That's a bribe wearing a suit. Victoria wasn't just collecting HOA fees. She was trying to deliver my land to developers. Every day I resisted cost her money. And cornered people do reckless things. Victoria proved that. She tried to destroy me publicly. She filed for emergency injunctions claiming I was building a commercial facility. She sent inspectors like it was a swarm. Then, she went lower than I thought anyone would dare. She tried to have me committed. A petition arrived claiming I was mentally unstable and dangerous. It had an evaluation from a doctor stating I had violent tendencies. Sarah checked the doctor. He'd been dead for 6 months. Victoria forged documents using a dead psychiatrist's name. And that changed everything. Because now it wasn't just civil court. It was felony territory. Then she made the worst mistake of all. She showed up on my property at midnight carrying accelerant and matches. My floodlights turned on instantly. Cameras caught her like a spotlight on a stage. Victoria Ashworth, HOA president, caught attempting arson, trying to frame me for the very thing she accused me of. The next morning, she went nuclear. She triggered a full law enforcement response. Helicopters, news vans, deputies. I stepped outside holding coffee and suddenly had rifles aimed at my chest. The sheriff's voice boomed through a megaphone. You are surrounded. Come out with your hands visible. I could barely process what was happening. Then I heard it. Explosive devices. She told them I was a terrorist. that I was planning to blow up the community center. Concrete bags from my foundation became suspicious packages. Her lies had grown into something lethal. The sheriff approached cautiously. Embarrassed. Marcus, he said quietly. We have federal pressure on this. We need to search. I nodded. Search, I said. But watch this first. I handed him the USB drive. He watched Victoria on camera holding accelerant. His face changed colors. That, he said, complicates her credibility. By afternoon, the story shifted. Not dangerous hermit. Now it was HOA president accused of fraud and false reports. And the media, once they smell blood, doesn't stop. That night was the HOA meeting. Packed room. News cameras. Officials. Victoria walked up like she was about to deliver a victory speech. PowerPoint. Slides. Charts. She painted me as a monster. She announced I owed the community tens of thousands. She claimed I threatened children. Then she revealed the real motive out loud. A resort project. A development deal. She admitted it on record. Then she asked if anyone else had concerns. I stood up, and the room went still. She tried to stop me. You're not a member. You have no right. I walked forward anyway, holding my folder. Actually, I said, I have more rights in this room than anyone. And then I dropped the truth. My name is Marcus Brennan. I said, and I am the sole owner of Brennan Holdings LLC. I laid the documents down. I held them up for cameras, which means I am the legal landlord of every house in this subdivision. Silence. Then chaos. People shouting. Gasps. Victoria lunging like she could claw reality back into place. This is impossible. But I kept speaking. You own the structures, I said. But the land underneath has been owned through my Uncle S holding company for decades. And now, it's mine. I spread the deeds like cards. And then I turned to Victoria. You've been collecting fees for managing land you don't own. Her face cracked. I pulled out one final document. And you're 3 months behind on your rent. The room erupted again. Victoria screamed. The sheriff restrained her. And federal agents walked in. That was the moment her kingdom collapsed. Not because I yelled. Not because I fought her like she fought me. But because truth is heavier than power. And when it lands, it crushes lies. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe. More crazy HOA showdowns are coming.